minutes and find something wrong with them, you know?
Apparently.
I think we have a quorum. I think we only need 5.
What was his objection to the minutes?
I don't know.
One of the other commissioners pointed out an error.
It's been fixed, yeah.
So he asked us to amend the minutes.
Okay.
Okay, we have a call to order for the Bartlett Economic Development Commission of today, whatever the date is, November 13th, 2023. May we have a roll call, Tony?
Jerry Cabasco,
Here.
Kirsten Erickson is absent. Robert Perry?
Here.
Bruce Suffern?
Here.
Nanette Gutenkopf? Here. Adam Lewinsky is not here. Robert Gorski as well. Mike Densford?
Here.
Okay, thank you to the 5 of you for coming tonight. So we have a quorum.
Next item on the agenda would be the approval of the previous meeting minutes from September 11th, 2023. We have a move by Commissioner Gorski to amend the minutes.
It's my understanding one of the commissioners sitting here, I think, would make that motion and second to amend the minutes.
Second. Or motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimously carries.
Well, that,
Public comments.
No public. No public, no comments.
Okay, we'll move by that one. Next will be the sign code discussion. Tony, you want to lead us through that?
It's going to be me tonight. Hi, my name is Daniel Harper. I'm the village planner for the Village of Bartlett. I'm also here with Christy Stone, the Director of Development Services. We're here to have a kind of a conversational kind of exploration on 6 items on the sign code that we are considering doing some changes or just wanted to kind of pick your brains. The 6 changes we want to talk about tonight are display frontage for signs, changeable message reader board signs, window signs, advertising signs, or advertising flags, excuse me, unified business center signs, and sign districts. So the first item tonight is display frontage. So display frontage is essentially what the length of the building is that faces directly to the street. To be more business friendly, the village staff, we've been kind of interpreting this with a little bit of indirect frontage as well, even though this might not be necessarily to code. And I can give you an example here. So an example here would be our Squeaky G's car wash on Route 20. Let me put my little laser pointer here. Right there, can you see my little laser? Okay. So Squeaky G's has about 40 feet of direct street frontage onto Route 20. So because of that, they would only be allowed about 40 square feet of sign display. So you can see they have about 40 square feet of sign display there where it says Squeaky G's Car Wash. However, when they were going through the process, they also said, well, we have this 150-foot wall that does not face directly on to Route 20, but we would still like some signage there. That's a lot of wall space that does not have, that we would like to use for some kind of signage. And so during the process, we allowed them to include signage as an indirect, for indirect frontage onto it. Where I think this just says express. It says express exterior wash or something like that. So kind of what we were wanting to do is maybe have a way to get indirect wall signage onto our code so that it's not a matter of interpretation by staff that might be interpreted in for different people, different ways, and maybe we can get something and we can codify it. So the first question is, should the sign code be revised to provide standards for wall signs that are not directly exposed onto the public street or thoroughfare? And then if so, should that wall sign have the same or slightly modified standards than what would be directly opposed to the public street or thoroughfare? So that's kind of the first question that we can discuss tonight.
I'm glad we're having this discussion, because I do think it's very important to discuss the variables involved in signage. And I kind of have a question. Number one for me would be, when you look at the car wash on Route 20,
Right?
as being subject to the same standards as a shop in downtown Bartlett, wherever it might be. There just seems to be a lot of variability in terms of setback from the street, in terms of whether the sign kind of complements the building or dominates the building. There's just a lot of variability here that I guess my question is it possible to consider, like people have to go to the planning commission with a plan for developing a piece of property, and there's variances given or there's variances asked for depending on the parcel, and the parcel is also always different. Is there a way to consider signage being in that same kind of category, that a parcel, unique as it is, applies for a signage and may or may not ask for variances based on its location?
So is your concern that some signs seem out of scale, as in they're too large for the buildings that they're on?
On both sides of the fence,
Yeah.
because I am aware of the fact that business will take advantage if they're given the opportunity to take advantage. And I know the flags are on the agenda to talk about later, and those flags are an obvious business is taking advantage of something that is totally inappropriate if you look at the sign ordinance.
Right.
So, again, this is a sensitive subject to me to a certain degree, because we had a little sign out in front of our store that said, "Local honey." And 3 different times, this little sign that was 18 inches by 24 inches stuck in the ground. We were informed to remove that sign from the easement that was inappropriately placed. That was based on a complaint. Somebody complained. And so the whole sign ordinance being based on somebody complaining, there's just very many kind of avenues of talking about this issue. So I kind of would propose that if it's possible to consider bringing it to the EDC, why not bring it to the EDC? A business has a plan that they want to develop a business in a location. This is their sign application. It might need a variance, it might not need a variance. I think we should be open to discussing variances for the sign ordinance.
So if we were going to do a variance from the zoning ordinance, typically it's based on the land itself and that there's a hardship. So we would have to create separate criteria for a sign variance so that what would apply to a building and a signage are completely separate. If it's an odd-shaped lot, those findings of fact might not be the same. So what factors would you think should be considered to support a variance?
Well, I would say distance from the street, distance from visibility, for example. And I can speak on our property, for example. Our property faces closest to Railroad Avenue, but our main entrance is set back, way set back from Oak Street, basically. And again, our particular experience is, I don't even remember half of it, but it's atypical. And being atypical, whatever the variance request might be, if it's so rigid that there is no discussion, that's kind of where it's been. There was no discussion. It was, this is what it is. There was no discussion. Now it seems lately that there's been leniency on signage, and the sign ordinance has not been enforced as rigidly as it has been in the past. You tell me.
For enforcement, if things have been consistent over the years or interpretations, there have been, sometimes it's what the intent of the ordinance is supposed to be. So you have outlots that have drive aisles on all four sides of the building. Do we look at a drive aisle the same as we would a public street? So like where you have Taco Bell and KFC in front of the Home Depot, should they be allowed to have signage on all four sides of their building? Like those sorts of things are what the interpretation of the code has changed as we've had different people in charge of administering that code. So we want to be more consistent. We want a code that everyone can read and understand, is really to get rid of any sort of interpretation, that it's very easy for someone to understand. Having a variance is a possibility. The village board previously has approved, I believe we've had 3 sign variances that have been approved over time. Typically, we try not, you don't want to have a lot of variances approved. If you're approving a lot of variances, that means it's time to be looking at your code, because it means your code's not working properly. And so you want to address that. You want to have variances only in very unique circumstances.
You know, I agree. You know, I agree.
If I was opening up a business in Bartlett or anywhere, as a businessman, number one thing is let people know I'm here. Mm-hmm. So there's 2 main avenues of signs. One is on the building, and one is on next to the main thoroughfare at the building faces. Why can't they have both? If they got to have one on their building, if they want to spend the money to put a big one, if it's just one business, they're the ones that are putting the money up for the sign.
So are you talking about like a ground sign when you say on the thoroughfare?
Like a culvert sign.
The culvert, okay, those are ground signs, monument signs.
Yes, and if there's 5 or 6 businesses in a small shopping center, they should be able to put their sign up, however big you could fit 6 signs. That would be determined by the village. But yes, people coming by don't necessarily see a sign on the building.
Right. Right, and our code does allow us to
Well,
have.
why wouldn't a business want signs wherever they could put a sign according to the village code?
Right, but right now, the way our code reads, you shouldn't be allowed to have signage, like on all 4 sides of the way a building is situated. like, for example, Bruce's property, he has the driveway on the side. It'd be on the west side. He wouldn't be allowed to have any signage there right now. Should he be allowed to have signage there on that side where people are driving? Should Aldi be able to have signs on all four sides of its building? Things like that are what we're trying to address. Because right now, the way the code's written, if you're taking a strict interpretation, they can't. They would only be allowed to have a sign on Devon. There were variations granted.
Personally, I think if it's a small business, a small mom and pop business, they're gonna do a small mom and pop business, no matter what signs they put up there. So one sign over their business should be enough. They're a mom and pop business. If you get a business like Culver's, they're gonna do 3, 4, 5 times the amount of business that a mom and pop would do. So, I mean, it should be made available. They should be able to put a sign on their building, which they have to have. And if they can make a sign, or if they have the money to put a sign up for their business out on the fairway like a Culver's, it's up to the village. They should be able to do it.
Right, we allow that now. You're allowed to have a ground sign if you're an individual standalone business. If you're part of a shopping center, the shopping center is allowed to have the tenant panel signs.
So I don't get it. Why are we here today?
We're here to see if we think we should be changing any of the regulations in our sign code. Should we be increasing the amount of signage? Should we be allowing more signage? Or should we be reducing how much signage is allowed? For example, if you want to go to the window signs are only supposed to take up 20% of their window space so that you have visibility in. Part of it is a safety issue, and part of it is it's changing the elevation of the building from having transparency to it basically becoming sort of like a billboard look.
My personal opinion, if they have a sign over their business, whatever they want to put up there, whatever in the village code that they could put up there should be the only sign that they could put up.
On the building itself, so nothing on the
On
windows?
the building that where their windows are, where you go in the front door.
So like over the entrance, so like,
Over their entrance, yes.
I think 25% coverage on the windows is reasonable.
You only have to look at the liquor store
Yeah.
across the street
Yeah.
to realize that, you know, that
I think on,
those signs have been there for ad infinitum in the windows, and
I think,
again, I am in favor of tastefully displayed signage for business. I'm pro-business. If the KFC on the setback of Home Depot best promotes their business by having a sign on multiple sides of the building, I think they should have that. To author a ordinance that covers all these variations for these various locations seems like an enormous task to try to bring uniformity, which I know is what an ordinance is trying to bring, is uniformity. But in so many instances, I think it's a case-by-case basis as opposed to uniformity myself, you know, because like the barn, the La Petite, the barn that's set back, nobody knows it's there. But we can't put a sign at the base of the driveway because it's inappropriate. It's against the ordinance. And I think that's worthy of discussion for an exception or a variance before some group, perhaps, or whatever it might be, as opposed to trying to discuss what all these variations, you know, if we had bought flags that stuck in the ground like they have for all the gambling and all the vaping places out on Lake Street and by the streets of Bartlett, would that have been okay?
A temporary sign is permitted as long as it's on private property.
So that temporary sign that's up there for 2 years is temporary?
There is a time limit. That's what we're trying to, we have been directed for a period of time to not enforce some of the regulations. Because of there has not been the enforcement, things have gotten, you see the flag signs, things are going longer than what the ordinance currently allows. We're trying to clean it up now.
Yeah, and all the things you're talking about,
That's why we're having this discussion. Because we want
And I'm
things-
great, and I'm very grateful that you are, but as a businessman, I'm just saying to you, I thought to myself, well, geez, they can put up a flag that says gambling or vaping. Why don't I put up a flag that says whatever?
Right. We cannot
Put
regulate
up multiple
content.
flags in front of my shop on my property. That would be, you know, something that I would not do, but I think to myself, why don't I just do that?
Right.
Because they're getting away with it, and those signs have been up for 2 years?
So that's why we're having this discussion.
Yeah.
I think it would be reasonable to limit the amount of signs on a building not directly facing a thoroughfare or street to 2, and then consider variances after that.
So typically, we would,
Because there's so many variables on location, I think 2 signs on a building should be enough if you're not directly facing the street.
so if we have, let's say we have one building face that is facing the thoroughfare and the 2 side building faces that are not facing the thoroughfare, can they have one sign on each side not facing the thoroughfare? Or maybe you say, because you said 2 indirect signs, so they could do one on each side, but not one on the back.
Well, I'm talking about a building that's typically a square or rectangle, not a,
Right.
you know. If you got a relatively square rectangle building that's not facing the thoroughfare directly, where it's covered under the code anyways,
So generally, you are,
I think 2 signs on which side you want to put them is fine.
so generally, you're in support of the idea of having signs that are not, that don't have direct facing the thoroughfare?
I'm just saying, if we're trying to establish some kind of a code for buildings that don't comply with the current code about buildings facing directly to a road, 2 sides should be sufficient. Pick your own 2 sides, whatever you want.
Okay.
And then you get one side on your property. And then you get one sign on your property. Yeah. Yeah. Somebody wants more than that, they can ask for a variance.
I just wouldn't want lights splattering in my house, but I would think about, well, you know, it's, tastefulness is opinion. You can't put that in code. If it's kind of what is it?
So you couldn't have a sign on Oak.
Car wash, I mean, they're not flashing signs, it basically says what they do there, it's, you know, kind of think of Home Depot, you got a big
And we're half a block away from the street.
hardware, lumber. I don't think there's
So you
an
couldn't have
issue.
anything
And the
on that, so
barn
you
is
couldn't
set
have
back,
anything.
is set back. Nobody even knows the barn's there.
Behind them.
So you couldn't have anything on that side of the building. on the side. Well, there's a street that goes along there.
Well, let me ask this. What issues is the village concerned about in signs?
So if we were strictly enforcing the code, this sign here would not have been allowed.
How many businesses are in that building?
Just one.
Just one.
Now, is that
Okay, there's just one. They could put a sign on the building, they could put a sign outside on the main thoroughfare. What else do they need?
So you think they should only have one sign on the building?
No, I think you should have two signs.
You know, if
and
it's a
one
decent
sign.
sized sign,
Yeah,
and if they don't think that's enough, they could put another sign, like Culver's, maybe not as big, but they want to spend the money for that sign, let them spend the money for the sign.
This building does have a ground sign. They do have the changeable message electronic board. I will tell you that any business, when they look at our sign code, they are trying to max out as much signage as we give. If I tell you you have 40 square feet, they're going to come in for an application that's 40 square feet, or they're going to be asking for more. They're going to be saying, we want 100 square feet. And it's trying to balance what looks appropriate to scale on the building.
well, I think now we're talking about the number of signs, not the size,
Right.
okay? Yeah, that's a different issue when you start talking about the size of the signs. Right now, we're trying to decide, I think we're trying to decide how many signs a business needs when they're not directly facing a road.
That's a good point. I mean, you're talking a single building, how many signs do they need?
Depends on the location.
Well, in that case, if you're coming down the road, you might,
There's always like you say, if they're in a bad spot where you can't see them,
Yeah.
it's different.
well, you
But
might
if
be.
they're, if they're
you might
right
be
on,
coming down
if
the
they're right
road.
on the street,
Yeah, but
everybody can
you
see
might be
'em.
coming down Lake Street and notice the sign of the side of the building first as you approach it. You might want a
you're
sign
doing
there,
45,
then
you're
as
doing
you go
40,
by,
you're
there's
doing
the other
45 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour going down on Lake Street. I don't think you're looking at the
sign. Well, it
signs.
depends what time of day, you know.
So, I mean,
Certainly not during rush hour, but
you keep their eyes on that.
I think two signs is
Be
reasonable.
less accidents, they keep their eyes on the street.
So currently, according to the code, they're only allowed one sign on the building.
On this one, they would only be allowed one sign that's directly facing Lake Street.
And what is the process involved in getting additional signage for them?
It's going through the variance process.
And the variance,
The way the code's written right now, the findings of fact that you have for a variance don't apply necessarily to signage, because your variances are supposed to be based on the land, whereas the signage variations are usually based on the building itself, how the building's oriented, so that we would have to establish different findings of fact.
so that variance, did that go before you or planning commission?
It went before the zoning board of appeals.
Okay. So right now, if somebody wants a sign variance, there is protocol for them to go to the planning commission, and the planning commission has the ability to give them a variance?
Correct.
Yeah.
But it's hard to relate the findings of fact that they're supposed to base that decision on to what our current code says.
Oh.
It's kind of like trying to take the category for apples and using oranges. It doesn't fit well together. So if you're thinking that we should still be able to do sign variances, we'll have to work as a staff and with the village attorney to draft new findings.
Well, is that a problem?
No, we can do it. Typically, you don't want to have variances. You
Sure.
want to address as much as you can
Yeah.
with the language of the code. So you want to anticipate what's going to be requested and what the appropriate standards are. So then that way the board, the zoning board, or planning and zoning commission, or the village board can go, this is 50% more than what we would typically allow. Or this is 5 more signs than we would typically allow in a space like this.
I think most businesses in the village are not standalone anyway, so most of them are restricted, just one sign on the front to begin with.
Right.
So we're only talking about a very small percentage of businesses that might be affected by an ordinance, a new ordinance.
Well, anytime a tenant changes out in any of the shopping centers, they get a new sign, we have to look at their sign requirements.
I understand that, but yeah, but most businesses only need a sign in front. They're not they're not standalone and they're not standalone businesses that are not directly facing the roadway, so.
But there are a lot of those businesses
Another
right
thing
now.
to
that
consider,
don't
like,
comply.
if there's a building that's 3,000 square feet, you might say, well, he needs a little bigger sign than a building that's 1,500 square feet. So maybe you want to go according to the square footage of the building that wants the sign and make it according to the dimensions of the building. Well, this is what we think you should have, this big a sign. If it's a smaller, 1,200 square feet, well, then you should have a smaller sign, smaller building.
So how we regulate signage right now is based on the display frontage, which is the amount of building that faces the street. So let's say,
Yeah, that's what I was just gonna say. You could have a building that's 40 feet deep and 200 feet long. And you're not gonna have a sign that's 100 feet long on the building. So you can't go by the square.
Well, you're always going to
Square
have
footage.
exceptions to anything that you do. That's why they could go
Yeah.
before the board and get an exception to that. But if you want to make out something that sounds sensible anyway, you shouldn't have a 40-foot sign on a 1,500 square foot building.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to make some rules and regulations somewhere. There's always an exception. You have a building, like you say. Well, how many buildings are there in Bartlett that are like that?
There are probably none,
None.
yeah.
Well, there's, no.
So, there's always, you could bring up exception to this, exception to that. Well, that's what, then they could go before the village and make their case.
But every building does have a square footage for the front. So you could limit it to the maybe 25% of the square footage of the front of the building.
But you look at this shopping center right down the street here, the boss's signature sign dwarfs the other signs in front of this.
Yeah, I noticed that driving by this. weekend.
Dwarfs
Yeah.
them. To me, that seemed like inconsistency.
Well, there would be inconsistency if they have 3,000 square feet compared to the other store. They'd only have,
Frontage. It's
Yeah, I'm
based
talking-
on frontage.
Yeah, I'm talking
Look at the
frontage,
front of that shopping center and the signs of the other businesses.
oh, I get it.
And
I
the
get it. It's a
boss's
bigger
signature sign.
Yeah, I get it. It's a bigger sign.
Yeah.
The others are 1,200 square foot stores. They can't possibly put as big a sign as he's got on their little frontage.
No, that's not the case, brother, but that's okay.
If I had a business that was big, 3,000 square foot, I would want a sign as big as the village would allow me.
I agree.
yeah, we can talk about flag signs now. So right now in our code, we don't have anything that specifically addresses these flag or feather signs as they've been defined in other places. And so we've been interpreting it in there's been two interpretations. One is as a temporary sign. These typically have a sign and placement restrictions, and they're also limited to 90 days, but they're not permitted. And so it's basically kind of on the discretion of when the property owner kind of requests it, we say, okay, you're allowed, your clock starts now on 90 days. And then I will reach out to them after those 90 days and let them know, or if it becomes an issue, enforcement to enforce it. The other interpretation is that they are flashing signs. And so the definition for flashing signs is advertising device which attracts attention by moving parts, parts moved, caused by natural sources. And so we've interpreted that as being, the flag being moved by natural sources of the wind. Flashing signs are generally prohibited. And so right now we have two ways of interpreting it. We can interpret flag signs as a temporary sign with a 90-day limit, or we can interpret them as flashing signs, which are prohibited. And so our question for you is, should we specifically address flag signs in our code and create a new definition for flag or feather signs and impose restrictions on them specifically for that sign type? Or should we go with one of these already existing interpretations for when we regulate them in the future?
So both of those signs in that picture for the same business?
Yes, so both of those signs are for the same business. Typically, we'd only want one sign per property. And so, yeah, that's what I just took this picture as when I was driving around saying, oh, there's some flag signs. And so
Some towns have prohibited the flag signs outright.
Right.
Because they are a maintenance problem, because they don't stand up as well as a permanent sign. So most towns allow temporary signage for 90 days. These types of signs really don't last that long. So they can either have that, they prohibit them, or they shorten the amount of time that they're allowed to have one of them out on the property. Yes.
I think we can,
For a new business coming in, I mean, if I was opening something new, I would want some arrows pointing to my doors. I wouldn't keep them out there 90 days because they are kind of an eyesore after a while. It's like, we know we have slots in there. We know we have, every place in Bartlett has slots. We know they're there. But for new businesses, I don't know about, I would say 30 days is a reasonable amount of time to put one of these, or whatever type of temporary flags, as long as they meet the other criteria,
so,
I sort of agree with Tim on a new business, but I would even extend it for a new business to 60 days. For a new business.
And then is there a period of time that they can wait and then put it up again?
Again, those are things
Need
that
all
we
the help they
can
could
put
get.
into the code.
So all the signs that
They're
are
brand new. I
up
mean,
now in the village that are
A little
been
help,
up
give them an
all
extra
this
30
time,
days.
why have them been allowed to stay up all this time?
We're getting into the weeds with enforcement. I mean, we have X amount of businesses all over town, and some are based on complaints, some are simply code enforcement driving by, some are that. You know, once we clean this all up, then we can, work with enforcement a little bit more. I mean, your individual enforcement question, I can help answer that later, if that helps. I mean, we'd have to go sign by sign by sign and to determine.
But if the ordinance is presently 90 days?
It's presently 90 days.
Okay.
But because they are not permitted, it's hard for staff to know when did that sign go up. We have no way of knowing, has it been 90 days?
So when they put up that sign, they are not required to register that sign with you? Well, maybe that should be something that they would have to do in order to put a time on how long it's going to be up there. And it shouldn't be up to the public to complain about it, to have it taken down.
Do you think there should be a limit to how many times per year they could get issued a permit for this type of sign?
Yes, I do. Twice. Twice a year.
so we can go twice a year, 30 days at a time?
I'm open, 30 days or 60 days, I don't care. But the expense of the sign for a small business is significant. And so to only put it up for 30 days, I would agree with kind of the 60-day thing. And so twice a year, you have a blowout special on haircuts or whatever the business might be. So twice a year, they can put it up there for 30 or 60 days.
Okay.
And it should be registered with the village.
I think we all agree that there needs to be a formal.
An enforcement mechanism.
And the ones that are up now need to come down. Now, because they're an eyesore to our community.
And there should absolutely only be one per business.
I'm agreeing with these guys here. I mean, you got to know when they put these signs up. I mean, you can't just let them do what they want, and, oh, they're gone, so we don't have to bother with
More
them.
businesses may do it if they know there are guidelines to do it, quite frankly.
And
So you may be faced with more businesses doing it, but
they might take the sign down after 60 days and wait a month and put the sign up again. You wouldn't know.
I think of the signs when I go by the oil exchange on 59 or a lot of those businesses out there. They really need those signs sometimes when they have a promotion of whatever the promotion might be. So I think it's a good marketing tool for businesses to use, but they'll take advantage of it if you let them.
So in instances where we have a shopping center, say Bartlett Commons or Brewster Creek Center,
Sure.
where you have 15 tenants,
Yeah.
are they each allowed to have a flag
Great question.
sign?
Great question.
Or should we put a limit to how many can be on one property?
Yeah.
Based on frontage, you have 200 square feet or 200 linear feet of frontage, you can have one sign per 50. I'm just throwing numbers out right now. But should there be some sort of limit overall?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Yeah, the village is going to have to control it. I mean, if there's no control, there'll be signs up and down all the time. I mean, they don't know, they don't have anything to go by.
Right. And when we adopt the regulations, this will have to go through a public hearing process because it's going to be a text amendment. Once we have the regulations and everything, copies of those will be sent to every business owner and to all of the shopping center owners so that they're aware of what the new regulations are.
There's a flag sign for a hairdresser or a barber, whatever, on Oak Street.
And there's the other question is, how many times are you going to put up the sign in a one-year period?
We said, I thought we said two,
I didn't hear that.
twice a year? Twice a year per
So my
business.
point
That,
on-
was that,
point
that
on the
was for new,
barber-
that was for new businesses, though.
Any business.
But
Okay.
we were talking about limiting it based on the, my point on the barber shop on Oak Street is it's lost there. You wouldn't even know that the barber shop was there. So she has, or he has that flag up there, and they need it to draw attention to them twice a year for a period of time, but not month after month after month in the easement.
So we talked about registering the signs. Do we want these signs to be permitted, as in they have to fill out an application with a sign, with here's the size of the sign, here's what it's going to look like?
Well, the flags are pretty standardized, are they not?
Right.
Yeah, so I think you have a standardized flag permit based on
And I've seen,
specifics of whether it's a shopping center or whatever the locale might be. And it's got, twice a year for 30 or 60 days, and it goes, and it has to be first approved by the village. Or somebody sticks it up and doesn't get approved by the village.
yank it out. Do you want to limit them by height or square footage? Just frontage, okay. Okay, that's what, yeah, there's some villages that say you can only have a 10-foot tall one or a 12-foot tall one, so I just want to make sure.
There has to be some regulation on the size of the flag sign. I mean, business puts up a 6-foot flag sign. Well, I'm going to put up an 8-foot flag sign. Next guy says, well, I'll put up a 10-foot flag sign.
Well, they're kind of sticking the.
So,
I don't think they could.
well, the ones that are in this picture, they're like 8 feet.
Yeah, they're all about the size. They're all about the same size.
There.
Some of them, the fin might be a little bit bigger, but the height, they're usually pretty similar.
Do we think they shouldn't be any higher than 8 feet or 6 feet, or do you want to have it 20 feet?
they stick them in the ground, and if the wind is too strong, they're going to blow over, so they're limited.
Do the other villages specify the size?
Carroll Stream has them at a maximum 12 feet in height and 20 square feet, and Schaumburg has a maximum of 10 feet in height, and their other requirement is 10 feet, no more than 10 feet from an entrance of a business.
No more than what?
10 feet from an entrance of a business, but it sounds like that, we're not going to do that because these are going to be the side of the road. So Schaumburg limits to 10 feet in height, Carroll Stream limits to 12 feet in height.
Carroll Stream sounds pretty fair, they're similar to us. I don't know how tall those sites are, I've never followed, but it sounds like 12 feet's probably the total length, and then probably 2 feet stuck to the ground.
Right.
That's what Schaumburg probably has 10 feet. Yeah, I just think some formality of it. Hey, come in and ask for a permit for a 12-foot
Right. And so if they're coming in, they're requesting a permit, so right now for their temporary signs, we have no fees. If they're requesting a permit, do you want to assess fee? Do you think we should assess fees for these?
unless the village needs it.
Okay.
Or as far as,
Monitoring it.
filing fees,
Right. Okay. So kind of just a nominal filing fee.
no, we probably should have some sort of fine if you don't abide by their 30, 30-day, $20 fine.
All right. I think we've settled on that one. We've briefly talked about window signs. Right now, it's limited to 25% in coverage. Do you think 25% is the preferred level of window coverage moving forward? We've had a couple businesses that have much greater than 25%, and they.
I've had these signs before in my old business. Not these, but the ones like the deli has over at 59.
The Polish deli?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the one thing I like about having it completely covered is it helps with heating.
Right.
I mean, if you're using a proper professional 3M cover and you're not just, like this business here, is just throwing, looks like just signs. The window. It's a liquor store. I think it just, one, between the two businesses, one looks much more professional than the other. The Polish place, I've honestly never been in there because I can't see inside, so.
Right.
There's that, the argument that I know safety's an issue for it. I'd be curious on why they covered the whole window, if it is for, keeping the sun out and stuff.
I don't think they care about aesthetics from the outside. I think they're only concerned about trying to sell something. And so they'll put whatever signage they need out in the window to attract somebody's eye and sell something. Question is the aesthetics from the outside. The sign ordinance is supposed to be in part based on overall appearance of the commercial building. And so window signs, to me, cheapen it.
So we cannot regulate content, so that's why for window signs, the only thing we can really regulate on that is the percentage of coverage.
Yeah.
So if someone has a beautiful sign, it's all subjective versus
Right now,
advertising.
25% is the code?
That is what is written in the code.
And would you say that that's being observed mostly or not observed mostly?
I would say that most companies that want to put in the window signage want almost complete coverage.
And so they're in violation. And how long have they been in violation?
It was during COVID as an attempt to be business-friendly, that people put up a lot more signage than what was permitted per the ordinance.
Now they think it's the new
Right, and you
code.
see one person doing it, and then it starts to spread.
Right. Yeah.
I think
I'd be in favor of the 25%.
I think 25% is fine the way it is, but they should not be able to block being able to see inside into the building, like on the far left there, where you got them stacked all the way up. You shouldn't be able to block the view into the building from the street or the sidewalk.
Kind of the general consensus is keep us at 25% and beef up kind of our enforcement of what we have already. And make sure we bring non-conforming businesses back into conformance.
This liquor store, you get, it's gonna sound weird. So if they remove those signs, you're gonna see the back of shelves.
Right. That's what,
I mean, is that?
that's what the business owner has communicated with us as well, and he was like, is this what you
And
want?
that's how he sets up, maximize his space.
Right.
He's putting shelves there. But that doesn't mean that it's right to put shelves in front of windows.
Sure.
So take up your 25% and hide your shelves and deal with the space as per the ordinance.
I think it's aesthetics. When you look at the building from the outside, what does it look like with all the signs on it, you know? Who cares if you look in and you see shelves? If you're across the street on the other sidewalk and all you're seeing are signs on the building, I don't think that's aesthetically pleasing.
I agree. I think 25% should be plenty for a business to have their signage up blocking the windows.
All right, so, sounds like we can, that's a
It's
pretty
not going to be
definitive answer.
popular, because they're going to want to put as much inventory as they can in their space. And so I get why they're doing what they're doing. It just is, you have to put limits on it.
So the next item we wanted to discuss was, one is just kind of a clerical cleanup for us, is for changeable message and reader board signs. So this is kind of your digital displays that are integrated into our monument signs on the ground. Right now, our standards for these types of signs are actually located in the definition for changeable message reader board. So if a business owner or a member of staff is looking for the requirements for this, it's not located in the body of the actual ordinance. It's located in the definition. It's located in the definition section of the ordinance. And so we were just asking you if we can do a text, if you think it would be a good idea to do a text amendment to move that into a general body section of the ordinance so that it's easier to find for both business owners and staff. And then the second question is, right now, business owners are limited to 32 square feet for a digital sign. We've had business owners who want to go larger than that, and they have not been able to. Do you think 32 square feet is a reasonable sign area, or do you think we should be revising this maximum limit?
What are other communities?
I've seen 40 square feet, and and generally around this kind of area of 32 to 40 square feet.
So we're average?
We're average.
I think it's fine,
Okay.
my opinion.
Those signs are all going to be in the front of the building, most likely, right?
Can you repeat that question?
Those types of signs are most likely to be placed on the front of the buildings, right?
Yes.
So, again, I think we're talking about the square footage of the front of the building.
So
32 square feet seems reasonable to me. That would be like,
4 by 8.
yeah, I mean, you could have a sign that's 32 feet long by 1 foot high.
It's a piece of
Or you
plywood.
could have 2 feet by 16, which, that seems like a lot of signage. I think it's fine the way it is.
Okay. That works for us. And so, and then also, or would you guys be in favor of moving our requirements from the definition section down into the actual body of the ordinance? So if someone's looking for changeable messages signs in the ordinance, they can find the restrictions. They don't have to look in the definition section for that. That would just be a code. Yeah, it'd just be a language amendment. Okay, good.
Maybe it should be considered on the square foot frontage of the building,
Right.
you know?
And then second to last here is, so right now, and I think this might address some of your observations that different shopping centers have different kinds of signs and different sizes, or they have different standards, is almost every shopping center, we have 18 Unified Business Center sign plans within the village of Bartlett. So basically, most retail and commercial centers within the village have their own specific standards. So this could be colors, materials, mounting types. They get very specific in the packet, I included a document. I included 2 documents. One is kind of an early one that I think just applies to color, and then a second one is for a more recent shopping center that regulates materials, mounting style, how they can be constructed, limits on colors, what kinds of colors you can use. And so basically, the way we've been doing them is these are kind of at the discretion of the property owner or the business business center management company. And so they can propose these unified sign plans to us. As long as their standards meet our minimums, then they have free rein to kind of enforce whatever else that they want to within that range. And so what this has caused us since I've been here is the businesses who move into these shopping centers, they don't know that these restrictions exist. And so we usually have to explain these restrictions to them, and sometimes that makes them kind of upset. And then the second one is, should we have a little bit more tighter control on unified business signs plans, in the sense that right now, if they just apply for it, it's approved by staff, and we review it to make sure it meets our minimum sign codes. And if it is, it's approved by staff, and it kind of goes into our records, and we help them enforce it. Should these go through a more public process as part of to establish a unified sign code? And then the next one is, should these business centers only regulate sign location and size? And that would remain exclusively regulated by the Bartlett sign code.
So right now,
Yeah, I
if
didn't
someone goes into a shopping center in Bartlett, they hire a sign company, they draw the plans up, they submit plans to us, and then more often than not, the restrictions for the sign plan don't match our code. They might be less restrictive, they might be more restrictive, and so it turns into like a back and forth. And a lot of times, I'll be honest, the property owners are like, we'll just sign off on any change, which kind of negates the purpose of the sign plan. What we're looking at is, would it just be, what we would like to see uniform is like the placement of where the signs are on the building, so that the signage are all kind of in line with each other, as opposed to having someone put their sign way up high, down low, kind of give it a uniform overall look, but just have the size and everything else is what the village standards are. So that some things are uniform village-wide. Really, the only thing we'd be looking at for these sign plans would be the location of it within their tenant space.
Which would be good for the other tenants.
Yes.
So a new tenant moves in, he wants his to stand out more than theirs. No, you have to play by the same rules as the guys that have been there before. No, I agree.
So, and then one of the other things that we've had with unified sign plans, some of them were incredibly specific, where it was you could only use certain fonts and you could only use certain colors. unless you were a national chain. And then the national chains could do what their standards are, but if you were, opening your first store, you had to follow the rules. So I think that's kind of unfair to, someone opening up their first place. They wanted to have their sign be yellow, and the center says, sorry, we only allow red, blue, and white. Some of those restrictions we think were kind of overreaching and put one business at an unfair advantage versus a national chain. So we just kind of want to level the playing field with that as well.
Good idea.
Okay?
Yeah, starting to make sense.
We try.
And the last section that we wanted to discuss was basically, this is just an interesting idea that we've run on. And so right now our sign code determines our sign restrictions, property use, and the category of the adjoining street. So if you have a more intensive street, typically you are allowed to have a bigger sign, and your signs kind of go down in size based on kind of the intensity of the street. So the more intense, the bigger; the less intense traffic on the street, kind of the smaller the sign. The Village of Lincolnshire, they have, instead of doing that, they've designated sign districts, and they have 3 sign districts: a residential, a commercial, and an office industrial. And so their maximum signs and their sign restrictions are determined purely by their sign district, not by the not by the intensity of the thoroughfare that the business is next to. And so this gives them a little bit of it's kind of, if you're in the office industrial district, everyone plays by the same code no matter what street you're on. If you're in the commercial sign district, everyone plays by the same code no matter what street you're on. That's not necessarily the same that we have here. So what we were kind of asking for this one is would you be interested in seeing this type of code for the Village of Bartlett in the future if we did happen to go down a complete sign code rewrite?
I think that makes sense, the different districts. Because it's taking into account the unique space that each one of those districts represents.
Would you think we would, they only have 3 districts. Would you support having a different district for like the downtown, where we have the downtown overlay district?
Yes.
So perhaps a kind of a general commercial retail sign district, a downtown overlay district, an industrial and office district, and then a residential sign district.
Amen.
Okay.
I think you're opening up a can of worms.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to, now you got multiple districts, now you're gonna have to have multiple rules governing each district.
Yeah, so right now when
You're up
someone,
with just one set of rules and take everything else on as a variance.
so right now when someone comes in for a sign permit, let's say it's a commercial business, and they'll come in for a sign permit and they go, well, I want to do, I should be limited to this sign, this size for my monument sign by the side of the street. And we'll say, look, and then we'll look and we'll go, okay, what is the designation of the street that you're located on? So it could be a arterial thoroughfare, a minor arterial thoroughfare, and all of those have kind of different restrictions. And so typically we'll get into this point where, well, you could have this large sign if you were located on 59, but because you're on Munger, it's actually smaller. And so we kind of have, so it's kind of those, even though, let's say it's an office, if you're on 59, your sign could be larger than it would be on Munger. And so what this kind of sign district does is all offices, you get the same, you're playing by the same rules. All industrial, you play by the same rules, no matter what street you're located on. You don't think that's a good idea? No. Okay.
Having it larger on a busier street just makes it easier to read.
Mm-hmm. And I think that was kind of the thought process when that was originally placed was,
Going slower on a smaller street.
yeah,
But if you're
right.
on a busy street,
And I think that's the thought process of what we have right now is if you're on a busy, major arterial street, then the bigger sign makes more sense based on kind of your speed that you're going.
And the downtown district has so many unique spaces. You just got to look at Bartlett Pharmacy and the bike shop and that therapy center over there. I mean, what applies to them? You know, they're in the middle of almost nothing. And so I think to be able to, you know, take that into consideration would be a good idea.
I think it's like socks. You can't have a one-size-fits-all set of rules.
Okay. So you think we should kind of stick with what we have based on the arterial size, based on the road sizes? So right now we have uses and road sizes that determine, so keep what we have right now instead of doing kind of a universal, all offices have this, all industrial buildings have this. Okay. And that's all we have to discuss about that.
Leave it again with the number of signs that a building can have if there were different circumstances, like Danbury, that they have another road on their side, if they have roads on the two sides. They can only have one sign?
So if they, let's say they have a building, let's say it's a rectangle building, and they have a street on this side and a street on this side, they can have a sign on that side and a sign on this side. What they cannot have right now is a sign that doesn't, that, let's say there's another street here, but they're not necessarily fronting it. Let's say there's another property. They cannot have a sign on that side of the building, the way our code reads right now.
They could enter in.
Yes. Yeah.
And is the planning commission going to continue to be the place where variances would be sought?
Yes, yes, that's state statute that would have to go for a public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission.
And so when you get a new business, let's just say it's in the streets of Bartlett and they want to have something that's atypical, doesn't fit the plan. Do you instruct them then to fill out the necessary applications to go to the Planning Commission to get an exception?
We do.
Okay.
We try to avoid it as much as possible. We try to avoid granting variations. Like I said, the findings don't really match. They don't really apply in this case. But all of the entire sign code is going to be rewritten. Most of it was done in 1978. There have been very few changes in the years since then. So we're going to be doing a full rewrite of the code. That's why we wanted to get your input first, so that we're starting on a path. And then we'll be taking this it'll go back to the village board committee, kind of summarizing this meeting. Then we're going to be drafting the ordinance and then taking that to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a public hearing on the text amendment. Then it will go back to committee and to review their recommendation, and then back to the village board for a final vote. We could bring it to your commission as well, if you guys want to hear a version of it as well.
Would. And Scott, you were going to talk about enforcement. You said I can talk about enforcement later.
Well, we can, I mean, you have specific questions about specific plazas, we'd have to.
No, well, here's the thing. I don't want to be the policeman that rats on another business and says, take down their sign just because somebody told me to take down my sign. I don't think complaints driven is at all appropriate when it comes to commercial signage. I think that should be something that, if I want to complain about my neighbor's dog barking, or there's garbage in his yard, or whatever it might be, but commercial signage should not be something that's subject to a resident's or another business complaint to get the ordinance followed. My opinion. Anybody else have an opinion?
You don't want anybody complaining about anything?
What's that?
You don't want anybody complaining about something?
No, I'm saying that you can't leave a sign stay up because nobody complained about it. even though it's against the ordinance.
With having a move towards permits,
Yes.
it's gonna solve.
Yeah, that's.
Right. Yeah, but in the meantime, we've had these betting things all over the place. You know, we look like a little whorehouse in Bartlett with our little gambling signs everywhere. I would have complained about it a long time ago, Scott,
That's
but,
part of the reason we brought it here, so we could clean some of this stuff up, yeah. for
yeah.
sure. Well, point well taken.
I see what you mean. You don't want to have to complain about it because the village should be the one that should be taking care of that problem.
Okay,
Got it, guys?
yes, yes, thanks for all your input.
I'm only on for 1 year, so I'll be gone in a year.
Okay, does that end our discussion now on the signs? Okay, we can move on to the next agenda item. Marion Bright?
I'm going to ask Scott.
Yeah, sure. That's a program that we started a couple years ago. We work with the Chamber of Commerce, the Lions Club, the library, the Park District, and we put out really two great events. One is the tree lighting, which is on Friday, December 1st, from 5 to 8. We will have horse-drawn carriages, food trucks, a DJ, Disney characters, ice sculptures, and much, much more. And the following week, on Saturday, starting at 11 a.m., is our Cocoa Crawl. And as you know, that's an event that features stops at a lot of our businesses and really pushes some foot traffic. So we're really excited about that. And we're going to be pushing out the marketing of those two events pretty aggressively here in the next couple of weeks. Nan's also on the committee. I don't know if I missed anything.
Just a lot of people have signed up. They're all in a frenzy. They started
Awesome.
months ago. When can we get a mug? When can we sign up?
It's great.
I think it's a great event. I have all my kids and all my grandkids coming to it. I was very proud of the Village of Bartlett and the Chamber of Commerce with Marion Bright last year. Very proud.
It was a big hit.
Sure was.
Okay, next agenda item would be new business. Tony, anything you want to discuss?
I have one quick thing, I promise. We always, every November, we talk about Small Business Saturday. It's a big thing for Bartlett and small businesses, and we have some small business owners right here tonight at the EDC. I presented kind of the same memo many years in a row, so I will remind everybody, we don't have a lot of big box retailers, we don't have a lot of malls. A lot of people do a lot of their shopping, of course, online. But also Bartlett is well-known for having a lot of small businesses, a lot of mom and pop businesses, mostly throughout our downtown district that we spend a lot of time discussing here at EDC. You've seen many of them come before you over the months and years for BETA grants. You've seen a lot of new businesses open in streets of Bartlett and throughout the downtown area and entire village. So it's the Saturday after Thanksgiving. It's on the 25th this year. If you went through the whole business list of 500 or so businesses in Bartlett and you took out all the big industrial businesses and then you took out some businesses like the Home Depot and maybe Jewel, what you'd be left with really is a lot of small businesses. So this is a reminder as commissioners and as employees of Bartlett to shop small on November 25th. For those of you who do social media, don't be shy to share some of the places you might shop. Again, a shout out to the Chamber of Commerce because I've seen they've been promoting, got kind of an early start on Small Business Saturday this year. We've been getting less and less materials. They used to send me 200 bags. As Bruce recalls, I used to drop off 20 to 40 at Banbury Fair has always been a large, really one of the biggest participants in Small Business Saturday. They don't send us so many materials anymore, but still, this is a reminder that that's coming up just a week from Saturday. So shop small, and don't forget to patronize some local small businesses that day.
So
The
will,
parking lot should be open by then.
yeah,
The chamber
you hope.
promote that all
I
year
hope.
long. Promote small, shop small, and local. Not
Yeah.
just-
Yeah, we do as well on our social media. It's just kind of ramped up this time of year, just trying to remind people of it.
Will the village be putting out any signs to advertise this?
We don't have signs.
Got to get a permit for those, buddy. Flag signs?
Saturday.
How big?
Go to the board.
Well, I told you they send less materials, but
That's it.
they send some shop small posters, some window clings, and these are both for Bruce Suffern. It's basically shopping oriented.
What's the square footage of that sign?
I think Mike should
let's
get
see.
some.
Who do you know?
Have your haircut small, too.
Feet,
Looks like about two,
maybe,
like about 4
Your
square
square
feet.
footage of your windows.
yeah. Very,
Window sign?
take these off right away after Small Business Saturday.
Okay.
Very, very temporary signs.
Okay.
That's all I had for new business, just a reminder of small
No
business.
other new business discussion, adjournment would be the next agenda item. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
I got a question. When's the Aldi's supposed to open?
Well, they've been giving us, I think they're moving a little faster than anticipated. This woman here might have the best idea. They had originally been telling us late January, but if you walk past it like I do every day, it certainly looks like it'll be open before that.
They're hoping before the end of the year.
When?
Before the end of the year.
Good luck.
What year?
This year, have you seen how fast that's gone up?
They are moving very fast on it.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's good news. From what I've heard, there's many people in Bartlett that are waiting to get in there and see what they could get.
Yeah,
Shopping.
yeah, I think we talked about getting a new grocery store in town a few times here over the years.
Oh, man, I remember,
We're pretty close.
you've been talking about Aldi's for about 6, 7 years.
Yeah, probably longer than that, actually, but yeah.
Congratulations, you finally got them to get here.
It's a team effort, and as something that Scott points out many times, the redevelopment, renovation, and filling of streets of Bartlett that we looked at as about 56% vacant for 8 years, while the grocery store space, and don't forget Ace Hardware was vacant, and many other spaces. There might be a few closures these days there, but there's other people coming in. And it's usually, it's around 100% occupancy now. You all recall the BETA grants that Mr. Raffidia got in 2019 and 2020. And if you had last looked at the former Bartlett Plaza this time of year in 2019, and you drove out here today to look at it, you might not recognize that it's the same center. And that's a large part of what made it far more attractive for Aldi to want to be there.
I would think so.
So, yeah, we're very,
But we got to hand it to you for sticking with Aldi's and not giving up on Aldi's coming here. So kudos to you.
Will all these have their own, in all seriousness, will they have their own sign, or will they be added to the?
They'll have signage, there's signage on the building, and they also will have a monument sign as well.
I was just curious.
I was shocked recently, I got a text late at night, didn't know who it was from, but they wanted to know, what is that big building going in over there by the bowling alley?
well, you know,
Under a rock? How do you not?
yeah. You know, it's a new prototype. You see the angle they put on the roof, but yeah. If you pay any attention in Bartlett, you probably would have heard it's coming.
Window signs, no windows.
Yeah. And they have a couple Aldi coming soon signs on the fencing.
They'll have a big sign out there, all these.
Right. But they don't waste money on windows.
Wait, I made that motion, but I don't think anybody
Second.
seconded it.
Third.
Fourth.
We're adjourned?
Adjourned.
All right,
Sounds unanimous to me.
it is.
Meeting adjourned.
Sorry if I spoke too much.